in territory. Spoilers will follow. Keep an eye out, and be cautious. The film begins with the scene of a man painting in a church. He tells us that he has been painting for a long time, but has never made any money. So he goes to the church father to ask for money. But when he arrives, he discovers that the father has died as a result of a disease. Knowing this, he is very disappointed because he will no longer receive his money. Then he notices the father's dress and goes to get it. He makes the decision to become a father while wearing it. Because the father has an abundance of everything, including money and respect. Then we see Lorenzo, who is trying to escape from Gerbino. And he eventually succeeds in escaping. Gerbino then orders his accomplice to capture Lorenzo no matter what. Lorenzo's friends then give him a horse and tell him to leave the city, and Lorenzo does the same. Following this, we see a girl named Pampinia crying because his parents died as a result of the plague disease. Gerbino appears and sympathizes with her, asking what she plans to do next. Pampinia informs him that the King of Russia will be visiting soon and that she will marry him. Gerbino tells Pampinia that her father had taken on too much debt from him. And that since he is deaf, all of her parents' property has become his own. He went ahead and told her that if she wanted to save her parents' house, she will need to marry him. Lorenzo, on the other hand, is running. Gerbino's bodyguards were pursuing him. Meanwhile, he encounters a man who is deaf and dumb. The man tells Lorenzo that he used to work as a gardener nearby but has since quit. He also tells Lorenzo that if he becomes dumb and deaf, he will go there to become a gardener, or he will be saved from Gerbino's guards. Then he climbs a tree, and Gerbino's guards move ahead. But then a branch of the tree breaks, and Lorenzo crashed and faints. The nuns then approach him and take him to church. And this was perfectly where they needed a gardener. The two nuns then began to tease Lorenzo by knocking him out. Lorenzo made a full recovery at this point, however he does nothing. After that, the head of the nuns arrives, and the nuns inform her that the man is dumb and deaf, and they hire him as a gardener. Later, while Lorenzo was taking a bath, two nuns arrived and joined him. We can see why the nuns wanted a dumb deaf gardener here by looking at him. So that if the nuns do anything with him because he is dumb, he will be unable to tell anyone. After that, we see Pampinia in a church with her friends and their boyfriends. This is where Pampinia informs them that she has a second home in the city where she will marry Russia's king. Pampinia invites everyone to come over. Gerbino appears and approaches Pampinia. Pampinia lies about what she was talking, claiming that they were simply praying. Because the King of Russia will Kamido marry Pampinia here, and Pampinia did not want to be with Gerbino, she devises a plan to stay in the church. However, it was the same church where Lorenzo works as a gardener. The rest of Pampine's friends then leave to pay her a visit. Next, while two nuns are preparing Pampinia, she sees Lorenzo in the church. The nun smiled and explained that he works as a gardener here and is dumb and deaf. After a while, a nun led Lorenzo alone into the woods. Pampinia notices them but has no idea what is going on. At the same time, we can see that Pampinia is very jealous. After witnessing all of this, King Jaginski arrives at the palace. Gerbino, on the other hand, informs him that Pampinia has decided to marry him. Knowing this, Jaginski leaves. However, a man outside informs him that Pampinia is waiting for him in another house in the city. Then Jaginski departs with his comrades to go there. Lorenzo, on the other hand, was in his room when two nuns brought him food. Actually, they knew what the rest of the nuns did to Lorenzo, and the nuns wanted to do the same to him, and Lorenzo agreed. The next day, when Pampinia was walking with two nuns with hot water for Lorenzo. She then tells the nuns that whatever you're doing to Lorenzo is a sin. The nun responds that there is nothing wrong with that and that she is simply jealous. Pampinia becomes upset and pours hot water directly on Lorenzo's head. We can see from this that Pampinia has developed feelings for Lorenzo. Meanwhile, as Zazinski prepared to meet Pampinia, Gerbino attacked him with his guards. During the attack, all of Zazinski's companions are killed, but Jaginski escapes. On the other hand, Pampinia's feelings for Lorenzo were growing stronger. Pampinia overhears Lorenzo singing a song one day. As a result, she realizes she is not deaf, but rather dumb. Then one day she goes to feed Lorenzo by herself. She had covered his face at the time, so Lorenzo didn't know which nun it was. Then Pampinia blindfolds him, kisses him, and departs. But this thing makes Lorenzo very happy. It's time for Pampinia to leave after a few days. But, before leaving, she informs the head nun that Lorenzo is not dumb or deaf, and that he has been acting since the beginning. Actually, Pampinia did it because she did not want to see Lorenzo with any other nun. Now that the head nun is aware of it, she fires Lorenzo right away. Lorenzo was sitting outside when Pampinia passed by. Lorenzo requests that Pampinia take him along. And Pampinia agrees. Zazinski, on the other hand, sees a girl underwater. Then he begins speaking to her. Jaginski informs her that he's going to marry a woman named Pampinia. Hearing this, the girl lies and claims to be Pampinia. Because Zazinski has never seen Pampinia, he believes her words. And Jaginski likes the girl a lot as well. Lorenzo and Pampinia, on the other hand, arrive at his house. Lorenzo tells her that he genuinely loves her while they are chatting. That he will marry the woman who blindfolded his eyes that day. After that, Pampinia asked him how he would recognize the girl when he hadn't even seen her face. Lorenzo declares that he will find her and marry her by any means. So Pampinia tells him that if he kisses someone else, he will forget about her. And that if he is unsure, let him kiss her and see. Actually, Pampinia wished for Lorenzo to discover that she had blindfolded him that day. Lorenzo was getting closer to Pampinia when Gerbino arrived with his guards, and Lorenzo mentioned fighting with him. When the fight starts, Lorenzo can't stand Gerbino, but Pampinia stops him before Gerbino kills him. And declares that she will not marry Gerbino if something bad happens to Lorenzo. Gerbino stopped fighting Lorenzo after hearing this. After a while, Pampinia suspects Gerbino of assassinating Lorenzo at any time. So she tells Gerbino that they should marry right away. At the same time, she informs him that after marriage, he will be required to leave Lorenzo. Gerbino thinks about it and deploys 2 of his guards to fetch father. This was the same fake father we saw at the start of the movie. Then, after the father arrived, we noticed him having a conversation with Pampinia. So Pampinia gives money to the father and advises him to stop the wedding. As a result, the father delays the wedding as much as possible. The father also agrees to do so in exchange for money. 2 of Gerbino's guards go to let Lorenzo loose in the woods. The guards had planned to kill Lorenzo, but Lorenzo killed them first. When he sees Jaginski on his way to Pampinet's house, he decides to follow the same direction. Pampinia and Gerbino, on the other hand, are set to marry. During this time, father begins to delay the marriage at the request of Pampinia. Gerbino becomes angry as a result. So he scares the father with his sword. And asks him to marry them as soon as possible. Out of fear, the father begins the wedding. After that, Jaginski arrives. Gerbino takes off, running. After seeing the gun in Jaginski's hand, Lorenzo arrives at the same time, and the 2 of them kill all of Gerbino's guards together. Jaginski eventually fights Gerbino alone, and Gerbino is unable to stand in front of him. His sword falls to the ground. Just then, Lorenzo asks to fight Gerbino. On this, Jaginski tells Lorenzo that if you can't kill him, he will. Gerbino then begins fighting Lorenzo while standing at the well. Gerbino, however, falls into the well during the fight and dies as a result. After all of this, Pampinia arrives and informs Zazinski that she will not marry him because she is in love with Lorenzo. when Zazinski sees the face of Pampania. He tells her that she is not the Pampania he met in the lake, and that he wants to marry the same Pampania in the meantime. From behind, the girl from the lake appears. The girl, however, is none other than Pampania's friend, Melissa. Jasinski is overjoyed to see Melissa because he loves her a lot. Then Pampania turned to Lorenzo and proposed to him. Lorenzo, on the other hand, says he wants to marry the same girl who blindfolded his eyes that day. Hearing this, Pampania requests that Lorenzo kiss her. And he realizes when Lorenzo kisses her that the girl who blindfolded him that day is Pampania. And he agrees to marry her, and the movie ends here.